Buddy, thank you. I want to start with the Fox News alert now. Busy day here. Former President George H.W. Bush now in a hospital in Houston. The 92-year-old taken there over the weekend after complaining of shortness of breath. But right now we're being told he's responding well to treatment. Spokesman telling Fox News this, quote, doctors and everyone are very pleased and we hope to have him out soon. That's the latest. End quote. Short statement, more on his condition and more in the stories we go throughout the morning. First, though, another Fox News alert now. President Barack Obama commuting the sentence for Chelsea Manning. The former Army intelligence analyst serving 35 years for leaking government secrets to WikiLeaks will now serve only 7 of those 35 years. That move already causing uproar from lawmakers on both sides who call Manning a traitor. It is a big morning of news, 2 days before the inauguration. So here we go, and good morning. I'm Bill Hemmer, live here in America's Newsroom. And Shannon, good morning to you.
Good to see you. I'm Shannon Breedman for Martha McCallum. Chelsea Manning is already more than 6 years into her sentence. She is transgender, was known as Bradley Manning at the time of her 2010 arrest. This is all happening less than 3 days before President Obama leaves office for good. Republicans are blasting the move, saying the president should not have aided a person who betrayed their country and put American lives at risk.
Chelsea Manning committed grave crimes. There's no doubt also that this is demoralizing for our intelligence community and our military. I can't imagine that anyone in the military chain of command or the intelligence community supported President Obama's decision to commute the sentence of Chelsea Manning. It's very disappointing and it's very harmful to our national security going forward.
Ed Henry is live in Washington this morning. All right, Ed, it seems like this caught most of Congress off guard.
Yeah, they really seem stunned, Shannon. And remember, the Army private was serving a 35-year prison sentence for leaking national security secrets to WikiLeaks. These were sensitive documents, both military and diplomatic documents that were very embarrassing to the nation. And what Speaker Paul Ryan is saying in particular is that he believes this will encourage more insiders to leak documents thinking they can get off the hook. Ryan's putting out a statement saying, quote, this is just outrageous. Chelsea Manning's treachery put American lives at risk and exposed some of our nation's most sensitive secrets. President Obama now leaves in place a dangerous precedent that those who compromise our national security won't be held accountable for their crimes. Remember, Manning was supposed to be in prison until 2045. Now will get out on May 17th of this year, Shannon.
And of course, this now sparks conversations. Would this open the door to some kind of clemency for Julian Assange, Edward Snowden? What about that?
Well, there's talk about extradition potentially for Assange. Is there some sort of a deal in place that if Manning got clemency, that there'd be extradition? The White House is pushing back on that, saying there's no deal. They are trying to draw a distinction between what Assange has done and how he has not faced up to what he's done, and how Edward Snowden as well, with all of his leaks of the surveillance program at the NSA, has never faced justice as well. Contrasting that with how Manning has dealt with this. Here's Josh Earnest.
Chelsea Manning is somebody who went through the military criminal justice process, was exposed to due process, was found guilty, was sentenced for her crimes, and she acknowledged wrongdoing. Mr. Snowden fled into the arms of an adversary.
So you see the distinction they're making there. What they're not mentioning, though, of course, is that this administration has been more aggressive, perhaps, than any other in terms of prosecuting national security leaks. And now this move appears to turn all of that on its head after 8 years, Shannon.
Ed Henry in Washington, thank you.
More on this now. Steve Hayes, some analysis now, editor-in-chief, Weekly Standard, Fox News contributor. Steve, I saw you last night. You were red hot on this. Answer this question. Help our viewers understand. Why would such a decision be granted on the way out the door?
Well, I wish I could answer that with any authority. What we've heard from the White House is that the president believes that Chelsea Manning needed this reprieve. She has tried to commit suicide twice in prison, and her life was at risk. This is the argument you're hearing from her lawyers. This is the argument you're hearing from defenders of what President Obama has done. I think it's going to be hard for many people to accept that, given the seriousness of what she did, and the fact that it did jeopardize lives, the fact that it did endanger U.S. national security, the fact that al-Qaeda celebrated receiving these WikiLeaks documents, and that Osama bin Laden asked associates to study those documents as they planned additional attacks on the United States and its interests.
Well, are you able to look down the road on this and examine for us what the effect of this might be, Steve?
Well, I can tell you what I've heard from intelligence sources that I've been in touch with, and they are appalled and concerned, deeply concerned, about the fact that this incentivizes future leaks. Let's be clear. Chelsea Manning was not a whistleblower. A whistleblower goes and identifies something wrong. Chelsea Manning took nearly 750,000 documents, sensitive U.S. government documents, and just dumped them. Even WikiLeaks withheld some of those documents due to the sensitive nature of the documents, but they missed a lot. Putting, as I said, putting our military personnel on the battlefield in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in jeopardy. And I think that there's deep concern among intelligence folks that I've talked to that this incentivizes those kinds of future document dumps and massive leaks.
There's the focus now on Julian Assange, and you saw the interview with Sean Hannity from 2 weeks ago. WikiLeaks tweeted the following. This from January 16th on the screen for our viewers. If Democrats want to see whistleblowers expose war crimes and corruption under Trump, they need to send a signal. Release Chelsea Manning. Whoa. Here's number 2 now. If Obama grants Manning clemency, Assange will agree to U.S. extradition despite clear unconstitutionality of DOJ case. That was from 4 days prior to the previous one on January 12th. Okay, so what happens then? Is this something that is pursued, or is it something that is given a pass for now?
Well, I guess Julian Assange's lawyers have indicated that he may, in fact, make good on his pledge to be extradited to the United States. We don't know. The White House has denied any kind of a deal, as you heard from Ed Henry. But I think it's hard to be for Julian Assange and against Bradley Manning or Chelsea Manning. You have people who are making, have offered a warm embrace of Julian Assange and what he's done with WikiLeaks after Bradley Manning, in effect, was what made WikiLeaks what it is today. I think they both deserve our scorn, and I think they both ought to face justice for what they've done.
There's going to be a lot more said on this. Steve, thank you for your analysis there. Stephen Hayes there in Washington. What will the president now say about it? How will he address it? He takes questions later today. He'll hold his final news conference of his presidency, 2:15 Eastern Time from the White House, and you can watch the entire thing right here on the Fox News channel. It will certainly be fascinating, and this issue will come up. Shannon.
No doubt about it. Well, the number of Democrats planning to skip the inauguration is rising even higher. There are, at last count, at least 60 House Democrats who will not attend Friday's ceremony. But the president-elect shrugged off the protest in a Fox and Friends interview with Ainsley Earhart.
As far as other people not going, that's okay, because we need seats so badly. I hope they give me their tickets. Are they going to give us their tickets, or are they going to give them to other people? No, what happens to their tickets? I hope they're going to give us their tickets.
Peter Doocy live outside Trump Tower with more. All right, Peter, how is the president-elect kicking off his inauguration week down in D.C.?
Shannon kicked off last night at a fancy black tie dinner where there were hundreds of foreign dignitaries in the room and diplomats. So the president-elect said he knew it was really safe. But these diplomats were invited to the chairman's dinner so they could mingle with the Republicans who are about to take over the town. The president-elect did fly down to D.C. and back to New York in just a few hours, but he did make remarks at this event and spoke about the importance of his running mate, the soon-to-be Vice President Pence.
What a good pick that was, right? And it was the balancing act. I felt so much better when I picked them. Oh, I had a couple of beauties I could have picked, but they were good too. But maybe wouldn't have worked out like mine.
And Mr. Trump also gave Rex Tillerson a shout out in the crowd to say that Tillerson was the Secretary of State he wanted from the beginning. Shannon.
All right, so there's been a lot of back and forth over the last few days. How does the president-elect now think things are playing out for him with Representative John Lewis? It's gotten pretty heated.
Right, and he thinks the Lewis attack on him, calling him an illegitimate president and saying that the Russian issue, it was encouraging Lewis to skip his first inauguration ever, backfired when an old interview was unearthed showing that it's not going to be the first inauguration that Lewis has ever skipped, and that his record is more like it's going to be the first one that he hasn't gone to in 16 years.
He conveniently doesn't remember. How do you forget if you go to an inauguration? I can tell you when I was at the inaugurations, and you don't forget something like that. So he got caught, and it's pretty bad, and it's making him look bad, frankly.
And this morning, Mr. Trump has been tweeting about jobs. He wrote this: totally biased. NBC News went out of its way to say that the big announcement from Ford, GM, Lockheed, and others that jobs are coming back to the U.S. that had nothing to do with Trump is more fake news. Ask top CEOs of those companies for real facts. Came back because of me. And this morning, also, the top advisor to the transition team, soon to be counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, said the president-elect is going to keep tweeting as president. It's just one tool that he has, but she says it's a way to get around people trying to twist his words. Shannon.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that with our political panel coming up. Peter Doocy, thank you very much.
And we will have full inauguration coverage live right here on the Fox News channel as every event takes place. First up tomorrow morning, Shannon and I will be live starting tomorrow across from the White House. And then America's Election Headquarters, Inauguration 2017, co-anchored by Bret Baier and Martha MacCallum, starting at 11 o'clock Eastern Time on Friday. But in between all of that action, we've got all the action for you every step, every move, every hour right here.
We do. These hearings, waiting on the nominees, waiting on a Supreme Court nominee. There's a lot to discuss.
What do you think? How you feeling about this?
I
just think it's an exciting time.
Oh, yeah,
you started
historic.
new and very historic.
In so many ways.
The news will come very, very quickly. So we'll be here for you on that.
All right, a former top prosecutor says granting leniency to Chelsea Manning now makes it harder for the U.S. to bring charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
I think it would strengthen his position considerably. If the United States government says we are going to pardon Manning for those offenses, I think it makes it that much tougher to then say, but we're going to drop the hammer on the person who published that information.
That former DOJ official joins us live as lawmakers in both parties are now raising the alarm over commuting Manning's sentence.
Also, there are hearings on the Hill today. 2 nominees for President-elect Trump's cabinet, in particular, getting a lot of attention. We'll tell you what that's all about as a flurry of hearings set to begin only minutes from now. Stand by.
And the president-elect says he's got no choice but to use Twitter to go around what he calls the dishonest media. Our political panel reacts.
Look, I don't like tweeting. I have other things I could be doing. But I get very dishonest media, very dishonest press. And it's my only way that I can counteract.
Heard from Democrats and Republicans, both parties now hitting back at President Obama's decision to commute the sentence of Chelsea Manning, saying the former Army intelligence analyst has put American lives at risk and exposed some of our most sensitive secrets during a time of war. Thomas Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, with me now. And Tom, good morning to you. I heard you last night, and you, like Steve Hayes, were hot on fire. Give us a sense for how the president explains this decision a few hours from now.
Good morning, Bill. I expect what we're going to hear in a few hours is the president saying that, in his view, the sentence that was imposed on Chelsea Manning was disproportionate and excessive when you look at sentences that have been imposed in other cases involving leaks or disclosures of classified information. I think the president is going to say in other cases you have 1-2-year sentences imposed. Here you had 35 years imposed, and that's excessive. All that said, I think what's really going on here is that this is a political decision. It's no secret that Chelsea Manning is somewhat of a political celebrity on the far left, and I think the president heard those voices and at the end of the day decided he was going to overrule what we understand were the recommendations of his defense and national security advisors.
Wow. So he has until noon Eastern time on Friday, 2 days from now, just about, what, 50 hours from now, to issue more commutations or pardons. We are told that more may come tomorrow. Would General David Petraeus be in that group if you're going to give Chelsea Manning the slide now?
Well, I wouldn't hold out too much hope for General Petraeus. You never know. And look, you're absolutely right that this president has been very aggressive in wielding the pardon and commutation power. I think what's going on here is that the president, as he said publicly, is uncomfortable with many aspects of our justice system. And I think that this is his way of really trying to affect rough justice and doing what he thinks the court system should have been doing in the first place in terms of issuing more lenient sentences or not jailing certain offenders.
Well, here are the numbers now. Pardons and commutation on the screen under President Obama are considerably higher than his two predecessors, and I think that goes to his interpretation of how justice has been distributed in our system. 212 pardons, 1,385 commutations, which easily dwarfs George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Julian Assange, we expect to hear from him at some point. What is his fate now? Does he come here, and is he tried? Yes or no?
Well, I think he is going to come here. He has made a pledge that if this outcome happened, if Manning was commuted or pardoned, that Assange would return to the United States and agree to extradition. I expect he will abide by his agreement. And look, I think what President Obama has done puts Assange in a much stronger bargaining position with prosecutors. Because when you have the President of the United States saying, we don't think Manning's offense was that serious to warrant a penalty of this nature, that obviously makes it much harder for United States prosecutors to take a hard line with Assange, because, again, he was the person who published the material that Manning unlawfully obtained.
Well, he's in London now. They've been trying to get rid of him, and you think he comes here. Fascinating. We'll see if that happens. You believe this decision has the potential to match a decision that was made in January of 2001 on behalf of former President Bill Clinton, and that was the pardon of Mark Rich. Why do you draw the parallel there, Tom?
The parallel I draw is that, if you recall, you turn the clock back to 2001, in the final hours of the Clinton administration, Clinton overruled the advice of many of his top advisors in deciding to pardon Mark Rich. He essentially succumbed to political pressure. I think there's a parallel here. We have advisors at the Defense Department, national security advisors, telling Obama, don't do this. Giving Manning the commutation sends a very negative, harmful signal to our intelligence and national security communities. You shouldn't bend to the political pressure. Obama did. I suspect this is something that historians are going to look back at and second guess.
Well, Ash Carter's own defense secretary said don't do it. He's one of them, right?
He is. He is. Yeah, and look, when you're overruling these career officials and people who are close to the ground in a defense or national security capacity and elevating political considerations above it, that's very dangerous ground.
Thomas Dupree, thank you for your time. Press conference 5 hours from now. Thank you, sir, for being here today.
Thank you, Bill.
20 minutes past. Shannon.
Several high-profile confirmation hearings are about to kick off on Capitol Hill. Congressman Tom Price and Governor Nikki Haley both will be in the hot seat. Why these two could bring major changes to their respective offices if they're confirmed.
Also, 2 days to go until the inauguration. Sworn in as the next president, number 45, Donald Trump is slamming two of his favorite targets, that being the media and Democrats.
He did a bad thing for the country. Very, very divisive. We have a divided country. And it's not divided because of me. It's been divided.
4 confirmation hearings about to get underway on Capitol Hill. They include Governor Nikki Haley for ambassador to the UN and Congressman Tom Price for Health and Human Services Secretary. The Georgia lawmaker could face the fiercest scrutiny of any Trump nominee so far. Democrats claim he may have broken the law by reportedly buying stocks in 2 companies and then introducing legislation that would have benefited them. Joining me now to talk about that and much more, Republican Wyoming Senator and orthopedic surgeon himself, like Dr. Price, John Barrasso. Senator, good to see you today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you know what the claims are by Democrats. Members of the Trump transition team are demanding a retraction on that story. They point out that these trades were made by someone other than the congressman, and they were done without his prior knowledge. But you know they're going to hammer this pretty hard. How do you think it goes for Dr. Price?
Well, he's the right person to be the Secretary of Health and Human Service. I've worked with him for a number of years. He's the right person in terms of the whole Obamacare repeal and replacement and returning the power to the states. I think he's going to do very well, and I agree with what he has been said of that. That is one of the contentious hearings today. The other, of course, is Scott Pruitt for the EPA director, which I'll be chairing in the Environment and Public Works Committee.
Yes, and by the way, your fellow colleague on that committee, the ranking member, Democrat Senator Tom Carper, had this to say about Scott Pruitt. Scott Pruitt's views are so far out of the mainstream that confirming him as the head of the EPA would be a mistake. It's no secret that as Oklahoma's Attorney General, he sued the EPA 14 times, maybe more. That's what we calculated. So you can understand how Democrats are going to say, this is a guy who tried to take on that agency at every turn. Why would he now want to run it in a responsible manner?
Well, I'll tell you, Scott Pruitt is the right choice for this position. He is someone who is Attorney General in Oklahoma, has protected the environment, he has strengthened the economy, and he has stood up for states' rights. The EPA under President Obama has actually gone rogue. They've gone way against the initial job description of the EPA, which is to protect human health and the environment by following the laws of Congress. This EPA needs wholesale changes to get back in line. They have been going, ignoring the law. They actually were found guilty of covert propaganda. We need to make sure that we have clean air, clean water and land, and do it in ways that don't hurt the economy. But the Obama regulations have been punishing for hardworking families, people living paycheck to paycheck. They have hurt the economy. We can have both a healthy environment as well as a strong and healthy economy.
Well, something Democrats seem very preoccupied with in a lot of these hearings that seem to have nothing to do with science or environment is this issue of climate change. We've seen it come up in education hearings and, all kinds of different places. So there's no doubt there is going to be a lot of conversation about that when the Attorney General is up and being vetted by your committee. For this, he has said that he doesn't think climate science is settled. He's got a lot of questions. You know that Democrats are going to take that and run with it.
Well, I expect that they will spend a lot of time on that. They even did during the hearing of the CIA director. It's where they went on with regard to the Secretary of State. They're going on this, failing to realize what Obama policies have hurt our economy in so many ways. If you follow the environmentalist extremist position when it comes to energy economics, we're going to be left in the cold, dark, and hungry. You need to use basically free market energy economy. That's the kind of thing that we do to get a strong and healthy economy. You can talk about climate change. You can talk about the future. All of those things are important. Is the climate changing? Yes. How much man has actually contributed to that is still significantly under debate. I want to make sure that we have a strong and healthy economy as well as a clean environment. Scott Pruitt is the right person to get that job done.
And Senator, I want to quickly ask you about Governor Haley as well. She's going to be under the microscope. And I want to play a little bit of what Senator Chris Coons had to say about whether he thinks she's qualified or not, and then get your reaction.
It is a huge portfolio. To be ambassador to the UN means literally to have to understand the interests and priorities and concerns of more than 190 nations. I understand that she would have a steep learning curve, but I think the UN is a place where we can't afford to have an ambassador who's learning on the job.
Quickly, Senator, we're almost out of time, but is she qualified?
She's absolutely qualified. He talks about issues and concerns. I'm focused about the issues, concerns, and the values of the American people. She's the right person to do that. Every time Barack Obama went to the United Nations, it was either for Iran, against Israel, or against American energy. Nikki Haley is the right person for this job.
All right, Senator Barrasso, thank you.
30 minutes
Thanks for
away,
having me.
those hearings will get underway there on the Hill. And, sometimes there were surprises. Late yesterday, there were a few, so we'll see if that's the case
fireworks
today. Yes. In the meantime, there was a massive manhunt for a man accused of killing a police officer and his pregnant ex-girlfriend now under arrest. And now we're learning also about details of his capture. That's coming up in a moment here, Shannon. And
the president-elect answers the question many have asked. What's he going to do with his Twitter account once he's sworn in?
Directly communicating. The man is the most brilliant communicator and natural connector I've ever seen, in politics or otherwise. And so he will continue that because the American people want information immediately.
The president-elect is explaining why he uses Twitter so often, telling Fox & Friends co-host Ainsley Earhardt he does not like to use it. I find that hard to believe. And he says he would stop, but he has to do it to bypass the media.
I'm going to be very close to 50 million people. So when people misrepresent me, because the press is very dishonest, unbelievably dishonest, and when people misrepresent me, Ainsley, I have at least a way of saying it's a false statement. Now, if the press were honest, which it's not, I would absolutely not use Twitter. I wouldn't have to.
Mo Alifi, former DNC communications director and Fox News contributor, and Brad Blakeman, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Great to see you both, gentlemen.
Morning.
All right, Mo, do you give him any credence, any credibility for the statement about the fact that he's had to go around media that has given him a very hard time? And listen, it worked. It got him elected president.
I mean, the notion that Donald Trump doesn't like to tweet is laughable on its face. He joined Twitter in 2009. He's tweeted over 34,000 times in the past 8 years. He was doing it long before he ever entered politics. He used it to push the birther conspiracy and lie about President Obama. That had nothing to do with the dishonest media. That was the dishonest media.
That's way before he was ever running for anything. I mean, as you yourself said, this was ages ago, but let's focus on now where he feels like he doesn't get a fair shake. And so this is a direct line to the American people where he doesn't have to have his message filtered through a network he feels isn't treating him fairly.
Yeah, I don't begrudge him the use of Twitter. I'm not one of these people who thinks he needs to put Twitter down. We're living in a digital age. Candidates, politicians have all sorts of new tools they can use to communicate directly with people. My problem is not with his use of Twitter. My problem is with how he uses Twitter. Push back. I'm a former communications director. I know the importance of pushing back on a narrative. The problem is he creates a lot of that narrative himself with how he tweets. He says he wants to be a president for all Americans, but he uses Twitter to settle petty scores with people who are not in the press. He uses Twitter to launch attacks himself. That's not being presidential.
Let's bring Brad into this, because Brad, you know what his defense always is, that he says he's a counterpuncher, that he doesn't like to start fights, but he likes to finish them. You know, is it presidential? Because he says he's not going to give up tweeting. He's going to keep his personal account. And he has also been on the record saying no one else has access to it. So whatever he tweets as the 45th president of this country, it's going to be right at his feet. That's where it goes.
No doubt. And it's presidential now, or will be when he takes the oath. Look, why give up an effective form of communication that is direct? As he points out, he has over 50 million followers, and I imagine after he becomes president, many, many more. Look, this is the modern-day FDR fireside chat. A president now has a direct form of communication, unfiltered, to the people, and the reason why the press doesn't like it is because they have no control over the message until the message is delivered. And that's exactly a tool that the president should have in his toolbox. Look, communications can be used offensively or defensively. Donald Trump is most known for his defense, but that's not to say that he's not going to be offensive in his tweets to let the American people know what's on his mind or what's coming up. He can't stop, because tweeting is Donald Trump. It's an effective form of communication everybody uses. He should continue.
All right, I want to play a bit of what Kellyanne Conway had to say about how he has used this format masterfully.
This is one of the only ways that he can actually connect and communicate directly with the American people. But this is the way that he goes around those who want to, I think, toxify his message and distort his message and communicate and connect. The man is the most brilliant communicator and natural connector I've ever met.
Mo, do you think that's part of why the left hates this so much, is because it takes them out of the equation?
No, look, you know, when Brad and I were both young bucks in the business, we used to fax out press releases, right? When Barack Obama took office in 2009, the White House was breaking news on Twitter. It is an effective use of communication where people, where political leaders can connect directly with people. I don't begrudge him that. My problem is with how he uses it. My problem is with the message he uses. His tweets now are going to have the ability to move markets, to drive policy, to create international incidents. He needs to be a little bit more judicious in the temperament he uses on Twitter. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying just be better.
Use your tools for good, not evil. All right, Brad, final quick word to you.
Look, I think it's fantastic. It's going to be exciting. A president is now going to be able to go directly to the people on a moment's notice. He's going to say what's on his mind, and it's refreshing in a town that seems to be, obsessed with spin and control. Our president is going to be uncontrolled, and that's a good thing.
Okay, I would guess that Mo would disagree with the idea of our president being uncontrolled, but we're going to leave it there, gentlemen. Mo, Brad, good to see you both today.
Thanks.
There is a dangerous manhunt in Florida finally over for the suspect accused of shooting and killing a police officer and his pregnant ex-girlfriend. Another officer died in a car crash during a 9-day search. Steve Harrigan on that story live in Miami. And Steve, how did this end there in Florida?
Bill, the death of these two Orlando police officers generated one of the largest manhunts in Central Florida history. It all ended last night around 7 o'clock. That's when law enforcement surrounded the suspect, Markeith Lloyd, 41 years old, inside an abandoned house. He was heavily armed in there, and police said they were surprised that his arrest did not end in a shootout.
We knew he had body armor. We obviously knew he had weapons, and obviously not afraid to use those weapons. And honestly, I thought this would end up in a much different situation. I'm very happy that no other officers or no other citizens were hurt during this arrest.
Lloyd's face appeared to be heavily bruised. He shouted out to reporters, "They beat me up." Police said his injuries were minor and that he had resisted arrest. Bill?
What do we know more about the accused killer, Steve?
The 41-year-old is a career criminal. He spent 10 years in jail for dealing cocaine. He'd once joked in media online in a video about killing a police officer, and he said his goal in life was to be on America's Most Wanted. Bill?
Goal in life. Steve Harrigan, thank you. In Miami there with that story now over.
We are awaiting a flurry of confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill. 4 of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks will go before Senate committees just minutes from now. 2 in particular getting a lot of attention. We'll explain why.
Also, it started over the weekend when Congressman Lewis said he will boycott the inauguration on Friday. And now the president-elect saying that Lewis has been caught in a big lie.
He conveniently doesn't remember. How do you forget if you go to an inauguration? I can tell you when I was at the inaugurations, and you don't forget something like that. So he got caught, and it's pretty bad, and it's making him look bad, frankly.
Some progress being reported in Iraq in the battle to retake Mosul from ISIS. U.S.-backed Iraqi forces say they are now in full control of eastern Mosul after rooting out ISIS militants from that section of the northern Iraq city. Now, Iraqi troops are drawing up plans to retake the western part of Mosul. No word on when that operation will kick in.
He conveniently doesn't remember. How do you forget if you go to an inauguration? I can tell you when I was at the inaugurations, and you don't forget something like that. For him to have grandstanded, because I think he just grandstanded John Lewis, and then he got caught in a very bad lie. So let's see what happens. As far as other people not going, that's okay, because we need seats so badly. I hope they give me their tickets.
President-elect Donald Trump calling out the Georgia Congressman John Lewis in an interview with Ainsley Earhardt, saying that he undermined his own credibility when he said he has not skipped an inauguration before, and yet it turned out that he skipped George Bush's from 2001. But put that behind you. Here is the list of Democrats skipping Friday, Inauguration Day. It has grown to 60. Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy, Republican, back in his home state. And, sir, how are you? And good morning to you. My guess is you will be there on Friday. Well, what did you say this week? Put your big boy pants on. What was that all about? You've got a lot of kids yourself.
Listen, I have 8 kids. You know what? If you look at the inauguration and there's that half shell around President Obama and soon-to-be President Trump, members of Congress sit in that half shell. And it is a great American experience. And members of Congress don't go there, Bill, to represent themselves or their families or their districts. We represent America in that half shell. It's this great tradition where we come together as one country after a divisive political battle, and we join hands and we move forward as Americans, not as partisans. And I'm disappointed that Democrats are saying no in such high numbers to come see Donald Trump's inauguration. I think it's too bad.
The idea is to divide before you take power, right? I mean, that's the intent of all this. Do you agree with that first?
Well, or delegitimize further Donald Trump's presidency. They don't want to buy into the fact that he's actually the commander-in-chief. And this is part of that process.
How would President Trump, I don't think accommodation is the word you should use here. How do you think he would deal with this or should deal with this? And perhaps if you want to be the bigger man in the room, you extend an olive branch to heal this wound, let's say.
Well, first of all, I think he was being pretty funny with Ainsley as he said, listen, give us the tickets back. We got a lot of people who want to come and see this great event. It's going to be huge. But beyond the inauguration, Bill, I think Donald Trump has shown a pretty good ability to forget past offenses and past fights and bring other folks in. Mitt Romney, a perfect example of that. Romney said horrible things about Mr. Trump and Trump about Romney. They got together and almost were working together in this administration. I think Donald Trump will do that moving forward. He understands that you have to work with the Congress, and not just Republicans in Congress. John Lewis and other Democrats who won't show up will be part of the next 4 years of this administration, and I think he'll let it go and be the bigger man and offer that olive branch to Democrats to say, hey, let's partner, let's work together, let's advance the country.
I've seen you guys in action. I see you at work. You're very cordial with one another. And folks on the outside who don't live and work and they're not used to the environment of Washington, D.C., they think you're just going at it all day long. And you're not. So you think about the image this is projected, and you think about how partisan the message that is being sent forward. Yeah. But give us a sense about what you really feel about the attitude in Washington today. Is it as poisoned as actions like these would lead the American people to believe?
Well, so I think you make a good point. What people see is the animosity and the fight that they might see on cable news networks. But outside of those moments, there's a lot of Democrats and Republicans who do work together to get things done. Now, over the last 8 years, Barack Obama didn't want to work with Republicans. He didn't want to build even relationships with Republicans or Democrats. I think Donald Trump understands the power of a personal relationship and working across the political aisle. If he brings in Republicans and Democrats, we should all go bowling at the White House, Bill, or have a few people over into the Oval Office. Reach out and have, he doesn't drink a beer, but maybe we'll have a beer and he can have a Coke. Let's engage in personal relationships. And once you have that trust, that personal trust from a relationship, you can start to work on the bigger issues. Now, we might not agree on the far left and the far right issues, but there's a lot of stuff in the middle that we can get done that'll move the country forward, help middle-income Americans who've been left behind by the economy, like places where I'm from, which is one of these swing areas of the country that helped bring Donald Trump to the presidency. I think there's a great opportunity to change from what Barack Obama did to now a new set of ideas where you're bringing the other side in and partnering with them. And I think Donald Trump, if he does that, will be very successful as a president.
I think your point is very well taken. Final point in the 30 seconds we have left. I think part of the result of November is because the American people looked at Washington and said, you're not working anymore. And your point is well taken. When was the last time members of Congress went to the White House? And when was the last time the president got everybody together and said, let's work on something? Can you recall?
And you're right. And no, for us as Republicans, when I was first brought in 2011, we had one meeting at the White House, but that was it. But Bill Clinton was a master at this. George Bush did it. Reagan did it really well. Obama, over 8 years, hasn't just done it with Republicans. Democrats either weren't brought in. So this is a great opportunity for Trump to bring folks to the White House, bring people together, and actually move the country forward. And again, there's a lot of stuff here, Bill, that we can get done as Americans, not as partisans.
I get it. I think the American people want it and they're ready for it. Don't let them down. Sean Duffy, thank you, the Republican from Wisconsin. Thank you for your time.
A flurry of cabinet picks heading to Capitol Hill for confirmation hearings getting underway. Tom Price, Nikki Haley, Scott Pruitt, and Wilbur Ross all going before the Senate just minutes from now, and we will take you there.
Also road tripping in the inauguration. How about it? How some of Mike Pence's oldest friends are celebrating his big day. Chelsea Manning matter. Lucas Tomlinson, our producer and reporter over there, talks about Chelsea Manning leaking 700,000 documents, not the 250,000 quoted yesterday. Defense officials telling Fox News his actions may have accelerated the Arab Spring, might have contributed to the rise of ISIS. Quoting now, ambassadors were forced to resign. CIA station chiefs had to be recalled. Secret diplomatic cables were revealed. End quote. Wow. Watch this story. President Obama talks about it 4 hours from now at the White House.
The Hoosiers hitting the road today to see their hometown hero, Governor Mike Pence, be sworn in as Vice President of the United States. Matt Finn is reporting live from Newcastle, Indiana. All right, Matt, are they already on the road? It's early.
You know, Shannon, it is Already on the road. They left at about 6 o'clock Eastern this morning. They're expected to arrive in D.C. tonight. We got to ride on the bus for the first hour, and it is loaded with people who love Mike Pence, some of them who know him personally, others who were there when he was sworn in as governor, and they are on their way now to see him being sworn in as the vice president of the United States. Of course, it goes without saying that the Trump-Pence ticket won the hearts of tens of millions of Americans, but the folks on this bus say they in particular have a special place in their heart for Mike Pence and Donald Trump.
Hey, I'm excited. Go Trump.
Thoughts?
Oh, yeah, excited. I am just so excited. I'm so excited Trump's the president. I can't wait to see everything.
How about Mike Pence?
Oh, yeah, Mike Pence too. Mike Pence too. Just happy to be here. Happy to get to go see history made.
Now, there are also 2 buses in total with 110 people organized by a group called the Roving Elephants, which is a Republican group here in Indiana. Shannon.
Matt Finn, thank you very much. We're taking our own road trip.
Yes, we are.
Huh.
We'll see Matt there, won't we?
Yeah, we'll see Matt.
Washington, D.C. Thank you, Sarah. Minutes away now for confirmation hearing set to begin. This is going to be a hot hour. Everybody's talking in Washington. Nikki Haley for UN Ambassador, Tom Price for Health and Human Services, 2 of the 4, and we will be on it live, top of the hour here on America's Newsroom.